Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to this adding push notifications to Salesforce Mobile Apps session. Thank you for being here this afternoon. I know that I have to compete with Tony Robbins, which is pretty hard, but I'll try to be motivational as well and inspire you to build cool applications that include push notification. I'm sure you have seen this slide many times today, so I'll quickly remind you to make your purchasing decisions based on currently available features. And once again, my name is Christoph Conrads. I'm a developer evangelist with Salesforce. I'm based in Boston, which is why I give you that typical New England accent. I blog a lot about this topic and tweet, so if you want to follow me on Twitter, that could be interesting, and I'll make sure that I post the samples of this presentation as well. So let's dive into the meat of this presentation. We will speak about push notification, but not about this. And so I want to quickly kind of make a distinction here between what we've been calling real-time data push for many, many years using different technologies, like, for instance, polling or long polling or WebSockets or things like that. Okay. I don't know if we should switch connector. I'll continue to talk in the meantime. So these were applications, and these use cases still exist very much, where you have an open application. The example that I chose here is Uber, that I'm sure you're all familiar with. And at some point in that application, you need real-time data. And so you're going to somehow subscribe to a real-time data feed. So in this case, it would be, all the cars that are available around you. But you want that picture to be very dynamic, and you want the cars to actually move in real time. So that's one example. Another example that I've been working on for a number of years is real-time, stock data, like some kind of a trader desktop type of thing, where you want to stream stocks and stock values in real time. I can take care of that. Yeah, great, thank you. And so these are all good use cases, and these use cases still exist, and obviously Uber does it. And so you still need that, but that is not what we're going to be talking about today. What we're going to be talking about today is really what has been called now mobile push notification. And this is where the push is not initiated from you, the user, using the application, but it can come to your application even. This is going to be a real problem. Yeah. Okay, so the data, the message that you push to someone's device can actually come in even if the application is not running. Okay, and so that's what I try to represent on this screen here. You may not be in the application may be in the foreground, in the background, or not running at all, but you still want the message. So you have plenty of examples like that on a plain vanilla phone when you get it, like reminders, SMS, sharing, like someone shared something on Facebook and it's being pushed to you in real time, and then you can tap that message, and that's what I indicate there on the slide. The OS, the mobile operating system, like for instance iOS or Android, will then pass the message to the application, and potentially that may include open the application if the application is not running. Okay, so this is done using a different set of technologies, and as you can see on the right of my slide, when it's not flickering, it's typically done using some kind of a proprietary infrastructure or service provided by the different vendors, like for instance by Apple if you use an iOS device, or by Google if you use an Android device. It's not good. Did we try changing the adapter?
Yeah, we put the adapter on.
Okay. No. All right, so I'm going to keep going. So as I said, the device may even be completely turned, well, not completely turned off, but in kind of a sleep mode in your pocket, you still get the message there. Now, because of what I said, that it's tightly integrated with the operating system, in other words, the message is not pushed to some kind of a socket listening inside the application. That's not how it works. The message is pushed to the mobile operating system. It requires tight integration with that operating system, which means that to build that into your application, you either have to work with a native iOS or Android or Windows application, or also very doable, a hybrid application like a Cordova type application or a mobile SDK type application as well. So in other words, you can't really receive these messages in a browser when running on your device. It has to be either a native app or a hybrid application. So let's try to quickly see how this is going to work and how you can implement that. So at a high level, this is what I would like to do. I have some kind of an app. So this could be Salesforce, this could be, the Uber kind of dispatching system. And in this case, if it's Uber, it needs to push a message to you saying, hey, your car is arriving. They use push notifications for that. So at a high level, you want to do something like that, right? That application would love to push a message to your device. But this is not going to be as simple as that, because if you look at this picture, it looks really nice, but I have no way to really locate your device. I don't know, where to push that message. Okay, so I need a way to actually locate you and locate your device. All right, so typically, the way this is going to work is that we need to introduce an additional service in the picture, and this is what I call here the vendor push service. So depending on the vendor that you're using, again, if you have an iOS device, that's going to be APNS for Apple push notification service. If you use Android, that's going to be JCM for Google cloud messaging. If you use a Windows phone, that's going to be WPNS. I was very optimistic there for a while. Okay, so it works like that. So now, when the user starts the app for the first time, the app has to register with that service, with APN or JCM. Okay? And so this is, if you want, pseudocode, because the exact API may depend on the specific service that you're using, but basically you will register for notification, and what the service needs to know is the ID of your device and the app ID, because of course you may want different types of messages, or multiple applications may register for notification, so the service needs to know that. It needs to know, okay, you register with that device ID for this application, and in return you get a token, and that token uniquely identifies your device and an application. Okay, so with that token, I will be able to push messages to you in the right context, and that context being a specific application. So now, at the client side, my device, you as the developer, you get a token. uniquely identifies device and application. Now, what do I need to do? Remember, my ultimate goal is that that application on the right needs to be able to send a message to that app, okay? At this point, the application still doesn't know anything about your token, okay? So what needs to happen next? Any idea? I know it's late, so to kind of help you a little bit, I have some giveaways. And these giveaways are burritos. Now, I felt it wouldn't be practical to bring the burritos, so I have gift cards. Come on. So, for a burrito, what needs to happen next in that workflow? The app needs to know about the token. Who said that? You said it. And how is that going to happen? I'm going to somehow invoke a service, right? You get a burrito. He gets a burrito. Here you go. It's just across the street. Lucky you. Okay, so the app now is going to invoke a service that's exposed by, well, the client app is going to invoke a service that's exposed by that application on the right. And I'm going to say, hey, you know what? That's me here. Here is a token that you need to map to that user ID. Now, that user ID is just an alias. It's just a way for the app to identify a user. Maybe you logged in, and I'm going to pass that. And so now the application on the right knows who you are. I'm Christophe, and that's my token. Okay? And remember, a token uniquely identifies a device and an app. So with that, if I want to push a message to you now, I can do this, right? I can invoke a method of that service provided by the vendor that I call push here with a token. Because if I want to send a message to you, I will do a quick lookup probably in a database or an object somewhere, say, hey, I want to send a message to Christophe. That database will say, okay, well, Christophe is actually mapped to this token or this list of tokens because I may have multiple devices, right? And now I know your tokens, and I'm going to ask the service to push my message to you, to your device. And the service will be able to do that because the service has that token registered. Okay? So as I mentioned before, the service is responsible for token management. It's also responsible for some quality of service features, like for instance, you know, if you're on an airplane and you're disconnected, when you connect back, the service is going to try again and do all these sorts of nice things that you wouldn't want to do. But your app now is responsible on the right here to do a bunch of additional things, like for instance, keep track of the mappings between tokens and users. So now you add a lot of, requirements to the business application that you're building on the right here. So that's why oftentimes you're not going to do it like that. You're not going to build that thing yourself into your application. We will add a third service in the middle because you want your app to remain clean and to be really, your business app. So there are services that you can use in the middle, like third-party services, that are going to take care of, device management and token user mappings and grouping, tokens and subscriptions and things like that. So now, with that last, and I promise, as you can see, there is no more room for a fourth cloud here. It's going to work exactly like this. So your device is going to register with the vendor push service. You get a token. Now, you're not talking to your own app anymore. Your own app is your business app. You're talking to that middleman in the middle there, and you say, hey, register that token. And so the token user mapping is going to be provided by that admin service in the middle if you want. And so when from the app you want to send a message to me, the app doesn't know, your app doesn't know anything about tokens, right? It's going to say, okay, push that message to this user, to Christoph. Now that app in the middle has the mapping between me and all my tokens, because remember, I can have multiple devices, okay? And so that service in the middle now will talk to the vendor service, so to APN, for instance, and say, okay, push this message to these tokens, and finally the vendor can push the message to you. Does that make sense? So it's a little complicated, but this model really keeps your app on the right completely clean, and you use a service in the middle that's going to take care of mapping tokens and users. Okay, so what are these services? Well, you can build your own, as you can see there. You can build that service in the middle, which means also that if you have multiple apps on the right, you don't have to build in the token management and all that into each app. So you will build like a push admin service if you want. You can use Salesforce as your push admin service. We will see that in a second. And you can also use ExactTarget as your push admin service. And so what we will do in the rest of this presentation is cover these three different approaches and test it and write some code and see the difference when you use these three different services. So the first thing that I will do to show you how painful it can be is to write my own push admin server. Okay, so remember in this case, I register my device with the vendor service, let's say APN. Then I register the token with the custom service that I will build, and then my app can push the message. So instead of showing you too much code here, I will show you the same code, but for real, in my IDE here. Okay, so as I mentioned before, you can use two types of apps to build, with built-in notification. Number one, what type of app can you use? Native app. And number two? All right, who said that? You said it, you get a burrito. Congratulations. Okay, so you can use native apps, so you can build it in iOS, you can build it in Java, or you can build a hybrid app, which is essentially a web app packaged as a native app. Okay? So here, because I think this is the most readable code for people who are not familiar with either Objective-C or Java, I use the hybrid app. So this is an app packaged with Cordova as a hybrid application. So the code that you see here is simply JavaScript. But this is not the right code, so okay. So this is the right version here. Okay, so if you use Cordova, there is a plugin, there is a push notification plugin, and in this line of code here, I'm simply going to get a handle to that push notification plugin. And then with that, you see that I register. And remember, that's the first step. That's going to talk to, in this case, I'm talking to the Apple service. It would be very, very similar if I talk to Google. It's going to register my device. And what I will get back here in result, so that's the callback handler, is a token. Remember, that's my unique token. Now, the next step was to register, and in this case, you see what I'm doing? You almost didn't see it, but now you see it. I'm invoking a service, which is my own service, okay? And I say, okay, this is the token, and you need to register, that token. So now that service, in this case, is a simple Node.js application. And here is what I do. And again, I did it in Node.js, so it's JavaScript, very understandable. And you see that it's mostly, in fact, SQL that I'm manipulating here. I say, okay, I have a table that's a mapping table, and I check if I already know that token. Okay? If I know that token, I check if the alias is the same. The alias is your user ID, because it's possible that you're using a device that is actually shared by multiple users. You can log out, and then someone else can log in. So I want to make sure that the token is mapped to the right alias. If not, then I'm going to update that mapping and put the new alias. So if I push to Joe, it's really Joe who is going to get the message. Okay? If it was mapped to the same alias, then I have nothing else to do. But if the alias, if the token was not known, then I need to insert a new mapping, okay? A new token user mapping. And with that, that is all. So what I'm going to try to do here is to actually run that thing. So I have my phone here. What you see on the right is actually my phone that's here that I'm streaming to the screen, and I'm going to take a huge risk here. I deploy that thing on Heroku with no security. So I trust you that you're not going to push anything bad to my device here. So let's see if I can get this to work. So I'm going to say hello. And we're going to push this. And okay, let's try to see. Okay, let me open the app first. So when I open the app, in fact, let me quickly close it here. Open the app again. So you see that in kind of a debug mode here, I displayed the token that I received from the service. So that's the token that we've been talking about. This is the token that I should send to the service. And then, the message. So one thing that you notice is that I just got the hello that I sent that I pushed like 20 seconds ago. So sometimes it's going to be like right away, and sometimes there is a delay, and there is no guarantee, and that's something that you need to know. There is no guarantee that it's going to happen within like 2 seconds. So like, for instance, I will close the app, and I'll say hello again, and so the app is now in the background, and you see the message popping up at the top, and then if I tap it, boom, I'm taken inside the application. If the application was not running at this point, the application would be started by the operating system. And you see that in this case, I just list the messages that I got. But at this point, you can do whatever you want because you have access to the message payload. So for instance, you can say, and I'll show you an example of that, check out this new offer. And of course, when you tap the message, the application would take you to that exact offer that was pushed to you. Okay? So you get the basic idea. So I registered with APNS in this case, the Apple push notification service. Then I send the token to my Node.js application that kept it in a database mapped to my alias. Okay? And then with that, I can push whatever I want. And you guys are nice. You could actually access that URL and try it yourself as long as you push, as long as you don't push anything that would not be appropriate. You can certainly try to do that. Okay, so that was the first way of doing it, and we kind of looked at the code. And we're going to move on to the next module. But before we move to the next module, let's look at the challenges that this approach really involved. So first of all, there was a lot to build. You had to build the infrastructure to actually manage the token and the user mappings. You had to build the infrastructure to send these messages. You have to potentially manage groups and subscriptions. And then there is nothing in there, I keep pushing messages, but I have absolutely no clue how successful these messages are. Typically, you push messages maybe for marketing purpose and things like that. And right now, I'm just pushing these messages in the dark. I have no idea if you opened it, if you took the action that I wanted you to take. Of course, I could write all that code. This is essentially, push analytics, but that would be a lot more code to write. Okay, so let's move to the second approach, and that was using the Salesforce Mobile SDK. So in this case, the nice thing is that you really don't have anything to do, because guess what? Salesforce itself has a feature that makes it work as a push admin service built in. Okay, so you notice that that cloud in the middle disappeared because your Salesforce org can actually play that role. Okay, so we will see how this works. And in fact, again, I will switch back to the browser here and log into an org. Let me actually do this. All right. Okay, so the first thing that you're going to have to do is to create a connected app. So let me show you, and I did that obviously before the session here. So it's a connected app, and I called it Push Demo. Okay, I'm going to edit it so that you have a better idea of what we're looking at here. So this is your typical connected app, but there are a few things that are really interesting here. Is that you see here, there is actually a checkbox, I don't know if you ever noticed that says push messaging enabled. Okay, so you can enable push messaging there, and then you choose the platform. So if you wanted multiple platforms, you would have to create one connected app for each platform. Okay, you choose Sandbox or Production. This is the Apple environment, not the Salesforce environment. And then, very important thing, you need to upload a certificate. You can't push without a certificate, so depending on your platform, you need to create a certificate, and you upload it there. And that's really all you have to do. So with that in mind, let me capture my users. So my user ID. So I'm going to go in Manage Users, and this is me, and I'm going to capture my user ID here because I created a Visualforce page here that I call Push Notification. And you see what it asks me? Can you guys read that? Yeah? It asks me for the user ID. Obviously, I could use the kind of the user name, and then you would do a SOQL query to find the user ID that you want to push the message to. And I'm going to say here, hello from force.com. Okay? And I'm going to push that. So as soon as I find my device, great. Here we go. So I'm going to push that message here from the Visualforce page. Again, I may have to do this. I'm going to close all these apps. And I'll show you the app again. Make sure that we register. So this is the application with the Salesforce SDK. You see that I retrieved, this is a simple app that retrieves a list of contacts. I'm going to get out of there. And again, I'm going to push a message here. So remember, depending on the quality of the network, this may take a few seconds, sometimes a little more. Sometimes it takes a minute. And interestingly enough, sometimes it doesn't work for some reason. And you know, that is actually part of the deal. In fact, if you read the service agreements with these vendors' services, they tell you specifically that sometimes it doesn't work, which seems to be my case here. It may come back in a few seconds. But while we are waiting, I'm going to show you the code that is actually involved in doing that. So in fact, it all happens in a custom controller that I created here. And you see that, I don't know if you guys knew about these classes, but we have, like for instance, a class called messaging.pushNotification. Okay, so that's a standard Apex class that is available out of the box. Okay, and then what I'm doing here is that I'm creating a message payload. I set the payload. The payload is essentially the message that you're sending. And then I'm creating a set of users because, of course, I can send the same message to multiple users. And then I can actually push my message. Okay? And since we are looking at code here, I'm going to show you something else, which is a trigger that I created here. And so essentially this trigger, what it does, it simply uses the exact same classes. So you see here that I'm using messaging push notification, and I do the exact same thing. And so you can code that in a trigger. So basically what I said here is that if the status of an opportunity changes, then I'm going to send a message to the owner. You see that? I'm sending the message to the owner of that opportunity. Okay? So we can actually test that. I'm a little concerned. Maybe it's the network. I'm not sure. So let's try it anyways. And if that doesn't work, we'll move on. So I'll take an opportunity here, this one, for instance, and I'm going to click Edit. And I'm going to change the stage here, which is really, okay, so I'm going to say, okay, it is 1, and we are sending it, and for some reason, we are not getting the message. So it may be network, so let me try one thing here. I'm going to disconnect. Well, if I disconnect from the network, you're not going to see my screen anymore. So, okay, you just have to, we'll keep it there and we'll see if it comes in. It may be network related at this point. Okay, so I'm going to move on and see if the message comes in a little later. At least we got one before, so that's the exact code that we looked at before. So now if I look at the benefits of using Salesforce in this case, it is mostly that you don't have to build all that infrastructure. You don't have to build that push admin server that was sitting there in the middle. You don't have to build the infrastructure to send messages because all that is provided by default in Apex classes. But if you are really into marketing campaigns and digital marketing, and you really want to understand how these messages impact your customers, for instance, and you want to measure that, and you want analytics, you can do that, of course, using Salesforce, but that would be more code to write because that is not built in, like the push messages analytics doesn't come out of the box. So there is a last option that I wanted to quickly discuss with you, and that was Exact Target. So Exact Target, or the Marketing Cloud, can also play that role. And for Exact Target, really push notification is just another channel that you use to engage with your customers, right? You can send emails, you can, you can push messages. It's just different channels that you have, and push notification is one of them, and they have an SDK that will actually let you do that. So today, as I speak here, we are about to release a demo application, pretty large demo application called Nibs, and I will point you to that resource in a second. So it's a pretty sophisticated application that shows you how to integrate, Force.com, Heroku, and Exact Target, and specifically to do that kind of thing, to use Exact Target to drive your marketing campaigns. And in this case, what I'm going to show you is I'm I'll show you the app, and I'll show you how the push notification works in the app. So let me quickly show you the app. Okay, so this is an application, again, built as a hybrid app with Cordova. It's deployed, the server side of the application is deployed in Heroku, but all the data actually comes from Salesforce. So you'll see in a second that I will show you the specials, or essentially offers. Yeah, you see the network is not bringing the pictures here. Here we go. Okay. All right, so these are campaigns actually in Salesforce. And one of the things that I can do here, let me try that. I'm going to share this campaign. I like that chocolate a lot, so I'm going to share it on Facebook. And typically when you share it on Facebook, what you would see is a message coming back from the push service with the message. So that would be, one type of engagement. Let me show you a few other things here. In the application, selection is actually coming from the product table. And I'm going to do that. And again, I'm going to share on Facebook. We'll see if the messages come later on. So they are, okay. So for some reason, I have another phone here that's logged in with the same user, and I'm not on that Wi-Fi, so it looks like I'm getting my messages here. So let me try to quickly stream this screen. Yeah, and that's, oops. Was that going to work? Okay, all right, that's that. Okay, so you see that's my agenda. Let's try that again. So I'm in that other phone. I'll push here. And a second ago, I got the messages on this phone. Oh, here we go. Okay, so you get it here. I get the message, and then I tap the message. And you saw that in this case, it really loaded the application that was not even running, and it's actually loading the exact product that I shared on my other device. So that's one way you would engage. Then again, from Salesforce, you can actually do the same thing, and that's the last thing that I will show you here. So I'm going to log in actually in another org. So I could look at the campaigns here, because all these products or all these offers are actually, as I mentioned before, they are maintained in Salesforce. So I'm going to take one of these campaigns. Okay, and we want to actually promote that campaign. So what I'm going to do here, I'm going to say I want to push it. Okay, and I would send the message here. So that would be one way. And you see that in this case, I got the message on the right here, and I get it that way because I was actually in the app. Okay, so no need to get the system level message at this point. I was in the app, and you see that the UI changed to that actual product, actually, which you may or may not like. That's something you can decide if you want to do it that way or not. Okay, so I can push campaigns like that. So if I was not in the app here, I'm going to send that message again from Salesforce, and hopefully we'll get the message again. I think the network is pretty flaky, but here's the message. Okay, so now I'm outside the app, and again, it's going to open the app. I'm already on that product, so it comes straight on that page. And of course, in Salesforce here, I have a page where I can actually push any message. So thanks for attending. Okay, and see if we get that. Okay, and oops, I'm going to try to get out very quickly. And all goes well. All goes well, and the network is not flaky. Here is the message. There you go. And okay, so you see now I got 2, so you see that sometimes it takes a little bit of time. You, of course, don't notice that when you don't own the client and the server of the application, but sometimes it takes 5-10 seconds for the message to be delivered. And that's really what I wanted to show you today. So this application is actually available, or it will be in a matter of minutes at this point. So it's available publicly as an open source project on the Heroku repository. The application is called Nibs. So if you're interested in this application, this is the URL, heroku.github.io/nibs. And all the entire architecture of this application is actually documented there, including what I just showed you, and it explains how the different things work. And I don't know if the repository is public at this point. We were going to go public at around 6 o'clock today, so you can try. The pages, the documentation is already public, so you can certainly check it out, and the code will be available at some point this evening. And with that, that's all I had. So thanks again for attending. If you have questions at this point, I'll be happy to answer any question you may have. No, you typically pass an ID plus some text, and depending on the vendor, it's limited, to a certain size. Typically, you have to be reasonable yourself. It has to fit in the kind of UI that they provide, to display a message at the top or in the middle of the screen. So, it's typically like one sentence, but each vendor has some specific limits. But certainly, you can pass a message, and you can pass a sound, and you can pass, there are different types of arguments that you can actually pass. Yeah. Okay, so that's a really good question. So you see that's exactly what I did in, let's see, I think in this version. So you see this here. So I call that application path. And this is simply something that only my app will understand. It's a state, essentially. And I'm telling my app to open in that state. Okay, so basically show the offer number 26. Okay, now that's a kind of a loose contract between you and your app. So this has to be something that your app can understand and can do something with. But typically, if you build an application, it has different states. So basically, the message can include a state that the application can open specifically. Right? Question there? Yeah, so that's a reasonable question. Again, I think it really depends on the type of application that you're building, and that will define the volume of the messages that you push. Typically, I think if you are in super high volume type of use cases, that's when you appreciate a solution that helps you understand how these messages are being handled by the end user or the target of the message. So I think that at that point you probably want to consider using something like ExactTarget, but it can certainly handle a very large number of messages as well. I think it's more about the information that you get about your messages. That's really what's going to be important. That is a good question. In fact, so behind the scenes, what's happening is that it's simply making an API call to the vendor's service. So in other words, Salesforce itself is not pushing the message to the device, which in fact you can do in this world. It's always the push service of the vendor that does that. So there is no governor limit there because it's the vendor that manages that. So it's an API call to that service. So my guess is that that's where the governor limit is, but that is something that I would have to double check. So do the same thing and look at the governor limits and see if there is something specific to push. But behind the scenes, it's just an API call. Any other question? On Wednesday, I'll give another talk, and it will be only about Nibs and how that application was built, the architecture, the different products that are involved, including Heroku, Heroku Connect, how it's, how we synchronize data between Connect and Salesforce and all that kind of stuff. So if you're interested in that application, it's on Wednesday. I don't remember the time off the top of my head, but the application is, the session is called Creating Engaging Applications with Salesforce One and Heroku, something like that. So that's on Wednesday. All right. Well, thank you very much, and enjoy your evening. Thank you.